consider amending. Perfect. Okay. Yep, I'll do that.
Mine, Lori, yeah.
Okay.
Great conversation.
Are you good?
She appreciated you bring, listening to them last week.
Where did they get?
Home one.
Yeah, the one in the river.
Did I go?
No.
Where the hosts.
Yeah.
Organizing.
Nice, there's nothing.
Indicative.
Not really good. Like she might have forgotten to cut the grass.
Free dinner Friday, free dinner Sunday.
Clearly. We're not talking about.
Sounds fun.
Hey, Darcy.
We're off here.
Okay.
Okay, we're 6 o'clock and we're good.
We're good to go.
Yep.
Okay. I'm calling the meeting to order. Ready? I call to order from the city of Petoskey, the city council for August 4th, 2025. I ask that you all rise with me for the pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Beck, would you please call roll for us?
Demore,
Present.
Shields.
Present.
Knocktrab,
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Murphy.
Present, we have a quorum. Thank you for attending, council. First is the public hearing. It's receipt of comments on the establishment of an obsolete property rehabilitation act, what's called the Oprah District for 434 East Mitchell Street, as well as receipt of comments on an obsolete property rehabilitation act with Oprah exempt certification application received from TC 55 LLC for 434 East Mitchell Street in Petoskey. Does anyone wish to speak to council regarding this matter? This is your opportunity for public hearing to talk to council. If you do, you come up, full name, full address, address council, not the audience. Does anybody wish to speak to council? Thank you. I now close the public hearing. Next is the consent agenda.
Do the other one.
I did both.
Did
together.
them both together.
Oh, I didn't hear you do both of them together.
Next is the consent agenda. It's adoption of a proposed resolution that would ask for approval of the following. The July 21st, 2025 regular session city council meeting minutes, as well as acknowledge the receipt of certain report of certain administrative transactions that have occurred since July 21st, 2025. Does anybody on council have any questions, comments? One thing I would like to do, should have done this a second ago, is to take number 11 and move it to 10 and 10 to 11. It's to put city council comments prior to closed session. Do I have a motion for that?
Don't support.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Knoptrop, second from Ms. Demore for that. Ms. Beck, would you call roll?
Knocktrab,
Aye.
Demore,
Aye.
Shields.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Murphy.
Yes. Aye. Thank you, council. Jumping back to the consent agenda, now where we were. Does anybody have any questions, comments? Otherwise, I'd look for a motion.
So moved.
I'll second the motion, Mayor.
I do have one question. And that's on the public hearing. On page 6, hearing public comments. We heard comments on the Veterans Park and that amenities were removed. Perhaps we could put community service organization, I don't know, what do you call it, banner or I think that would be important to put into this minutes so that we can push the service organizations to possibly get together and fund another one, because that was the piece that was removed, basically fell down.
Signage from Veterans Park.
Signage in Veterans Park that listed the community service organizations.
Where are we, Mayor? I'm sorry. Oh, here we go.
Page-
Public comment. I don't remember. Is that what she asked for?
Mhm.
She mentioned the service organizations, and I made the comment that we should note it and possibly they could pick up the funding for that.
I do recall you saying that.
So could we just amend it by saying Veteran Park and signage for the community service organizations? Okay,
Where do you want this, John? I mean, what, right, but where,
right after on the first line, heard a comment on Veterans Park and that amenities were removed. I guess identify the amenities so that we can start pushing the service organizations to step up to the plate and take care of it. Yes.
I have notes here. It was from Carla Buckmaster, comment during public comment at last meeting. Veterans Park had no flags or signs indicating the service clubs present in the city of Petoskey and that they needed something. Does that make sense, Sarah Beck? Is that helpful?
I mean, yeah, I do recall, I guess it's just whatever
Okay,
you guys
make
want
a
to
motion
say.
To change that, amend it. I guess who made the motion?
You
I
made,
will amend my motion to incorporate the content that Councilperson Walker just read into the record.
I'll second that motion, Mayor.
I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Demore,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Shield,
Aye.
Nachtrab,
Aye.
Murphy.
Yes. Next is public comment. This is your opportunity to step up to the mic, push it so it's green, and you have time to talk to city council regarding a concern. I need your full address, and I also need to address city council. Is there anybody wish to speak to council at this time? There's somebody online, is there?
No hands.
Okay. Moving on. We now go to city manager's report, and I turn it over to city manager Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. Want to take a few moments to celebrate staff, as this is our first meeting of the month. Celebrating staff birthdays for the month of August. Kevin Marchinowitz, Public Works, celebrates a birthday last week. Audrey Plath, our finance director, celebrated a birthday on the 2nd. Will Bowen, Public Safety, August 7th. Steve Sparks, Public Works, August 11th. Jody Haven, at the library, August 12th. Michael Parker, Lieutenant with Public Safety, August 25th. Eric Crucell, Electric Department, August 26th. John Dutch, Public Safety, August 29th. Hunter Arnold, Public Safety, August 30th. And Gina Ellenberger in Public Safety, August 31st. As well, August work anniversaries celebrated by staff this month. April Sanders, Parking Office, 2 years. Dallas Givens, Public Safety, 2 years. Mary Holbein, a library, 8 years. Scott Lamont, Public Safety, 9 years. Miss Beck, to my right, City Manager's Office and Clerk, 16 years. Carl Fritz, Public Safety, 20 years. Dave Krusky, Parks and Rec, 24 years. And Mary Sue Prantera, Library, 29 years with the city. Wanted to celebrate or highlight, I guess, some upcoming meetings for city council and resident information. Zoning Board of Appeals does have a regular meeting tomorrow, August 5th. That's at 6 o'clock in the community room. Parks and Recreation will be meeting next Monday at 6 o'clock in the community room. I'm told Youth Advisory Council is not meeting, sorry about that, on the 11th at their, go ahead, you can update me.
Just I believe it's sometime that week that we're
Okay.
going on a trolley tour
Gotcha.
of the Parks and Rec.
So we'll update that on our.
I'll get you the date. I apologize.
Okay. And then just, I put a line here. These will be special sessions. These are outside of our normal, routine. But next week we'll be having a combined work session with the Planning Commission, as we have done, annually, reviewing capital improvement plan, projects. Staff has been working on this, for the past few months. So we're ready to present out. I'm hoping to have, binders delivered to each of you and planning commission members sometime tomorrow afternoon. So be expecting that on your doorstep. We will have a special work session scheduled right now for Tuesday, September 9th. This will be starting at 6 o'clock. The topic will be our, talking about unhoused population. I've extended an invite to several organizations that are actively working with this population. So providing them an opportunity to share what work they're doing actively currently in the community as we speak, and then how can we come alongside them and assist. So that'll be again, Tuesday, September 9th, 6 o'clock here in this room. And then I have scheduled a special meeting, a training session for city council. I also will be extending the invitation to Planning Commission and Zoning Board of Appeal members and possibly more boards or commissions. I'm not certain how far we'll go with this, but so this will be a training set up by the Michigan Municipal League. They will be coming up and providing this training really to look at, essentially the topic is everything meetings. So how do we structure our meetings? How do we facilitate the meetings? And I just think it'll be a good opportunity for a refresher for all of us to go through this. The legal counsel from MML will be presenting this. Again, this is currently set up for October 27th. I set a start time of 5:30. I'm hoping we can start a little earlier than we normally do because it is a 3-hour session. So did I hear a grunt?
That was, let's see.
No, it was not me, it was Joe. Sigh. I'm game for 4-hour meetings. I love them.
Obviously, we'll bring in some food for you, so you don't, we don't hear your stomach garbling here. And then I wanted to let you know, we have this community open house set for Winter Sports Park. This will be August 19th, from 4 to 6:30 here in the community room upstairs here at City Hall. Really want to share out concepts. We want to share out survey responses that have been gathered to this point for specifically the Winter Sports Park as we finalize the master plan for that location. So we will, again, have poster boards set up. We'll have comment cards available for people to continue to chime in as we refine plans for this wonderful community facility. Wanted to also take a moment to celebrate our new public safety officer. Charlie Ramirez was sworn in by our city clerk last week. Sarah, last week? Charlie comes to us from the city of Charlevoix, has served in their department for about 14 months. He is born and raised in Petoskey. He's really excited to serve in the community he's born and raised in and lives in. So it's exciting to bring Charlie aboard, and we certainly wish him the best in his efforts. And then we also wanted to let citizens know our public safety annual Citizens Academy is accepting applications currently. This is a 12, was it 8 or 12 weeks? Might be 8 weeks. Kind of a training, kind of peel the curtain back and look at all of the operations of public safety. And so this will be evenings, October 4th through October 23rd. This is Thursday evening, typically 6 to 8:30-ish. I'd encourage folks to take a look at the link, fill an application out if interested, and this typically will fill up. So that is my report. Happy to take comments or questions.
Council, do you have any questions for the city manager? Ms. Walker.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Shane.
Yeah.
I did have a question about the Parks and Rec Commission, meeting. Is this their regular August meeting? Because I know they normally take the summer off.
Yeah.
So does that mean just June and July and they resume? Or is this a special meeting being conducted in preparation for something else coming down the pipe?
They've been assisting with master plan documents and picnics around the community at parks. So we wanted to kind of try to remain active through the summer. We were obviously working on a parks millage that we're gonna hit pause on. So we kept our summer meetings with them at least August. They will be considering at this meeting the concept of a dog park and potentially bring a recommendation forward to city council.
Thank you.
What else, council? Mr. Knobtrop.
Jeff, quick question. You just mentioned, is the recreational levy consideration tabled, not happening?
Yeah, it's kind of hit on pause. As I was having individual discussions, I didn't feel like we had the support to move forward at this time. So we're going to continue to do some community engagement efforts through this fall and potentially have conversations next spring on what that looks like.
Anyone else? Thank you, City Manager Horn. Next is old business. It's the adoption of a proposed resolution that would establish an Oprah district for 434 East Mitchell Street. This may have a motion on it. I turn it over to City Manager Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. So essentially, this is a two-part process. We've at the last, actually what the last meeting was July 7th, that city council heard a presentation and heard kind of what the plan is for the property. This is the former Leo's Lounge location downtown, a big chunk of our downtown on East Mitchell. So we heard a presentation on July 7th. After that meeting, we did send out notices to all taxing jurisdictions. We sent notices, posted notices on our website. We posted a public hearing notice here at City Hall. We posted a notice in the Petoskey News Review, and the city clerk mailed notices to all property owners within 300 feet of 434 East Mitchell Street. We've only received one written comment, and that was from the downtown manager, which I believe the city clerk sent out to you all as well in support of this consideration. No other written comments were received during this time. So essentially, the property is seeking consideration. Again, this is two parts. It's the setting the district, which the district is exclusive to 434 East Mitchell Street. And then the other option or the other agenda item is the exemption certificate application. So this, if approved, will be sent to the State Tax Commission for their review and consideration. Essentially what an Oprah allows a developer to do is it freezes the property value at the pre-development assessed value. And so it incentivizes redevelopment. Essentially, it's another tool that we can use in our redevelopment toolbox to incentivize a developer to invest in a property to bring it back to life, if you will. So this developer has gone through that process. We've met several times. This in combination with MEDC consideration makes this, I guess, a viable project. I guess that's debated between the owner and his consultant, but this certainly makes it much more viable than if this opportunity wasn't in front of the developer. So we've done, this will be our fourth Oprah in the city. So I think we've had some good experiences with it, some that have been a little bit more challenging, which is why in the resolution for the application, we do have some language in here about about a sunset, which means that, and I'll just read it to you on page 36 of your packet. Where our city council requires that rehabilitation of the facility shall be completed within 2 years of issuance of a Petoskey zoning permit by the city zoning administrator. And this is just some example language. Certainly council can dig a little deeper and make this a little more clear if you are not fully understanding what that means from a zoning permit standpoint. It could be 2 years from today, or from approval. You know, we heard the timeline from the developer. It's a fairly aggressive timeline. I don't believe he desires to sit on his hands on this one. So we'll take whatever feedback that you'd like. If you want to make any amendments to this resolution, there are some language within the statute, within the Oprah statute, that allows a revocation of a certificate. So that is an opportunity that city council would have if things start to go sideways, which again, we don't anticipate, but that is an option for council to consider as well. So I'm happy to take questions. The developer and his consultant is here. We have Laura on the call as well. Laura has reviewed these documents as well. So happy to engage at this point.
Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Shane. I did have one question, and it was more of a technical question. In previous incarnations with the previous like 3 Oprah-approved developments, we had Emmett County Building Inspector actually inspect the buildings, and this time it's the assessor. And I'm wondering, obviously, both of those humans are certified and qualified to determine an obsolete property. But I guess I'm just wondering why one over the other, or do you have any insight on that?
That's a good question. I don't know. The last one we did was the assessor did a walkthrough on that property as well. I don't know from a statute standpoint if it can be either or. But how I read it, it needed to be the assessor. The assessor has if you look at the application on part 3, there's a recommendation here that the assessor filled out. I'm just looking for the statement of obsolescence.
I think it's in the bottom somewhere.
On page 41.
Right here.
I know, I was just trying to find the section of the statute that said if it needed to be the assessor or the. I don't know, Tom, if you have an answer to that, if it can be a building official.
That needs to be the assessor.
Okay,
Oh,
I think in past cases, you may have a situation where the building inspector deemed the building not inhabitable. That's another row.
Okay.
Needs to be.
makes sense.
okay.
Thank you. That was my own question.
Mr. Moore.
So referencing page 36, that city manager was just referencing, at the very top,
You go, please fold so people can turn their page.
So the application.
page 36, that's the
Yeah.
resolution. Okay,
Proceed.
the very top sentence, which is what establishes the sunset clause. I would like to suggest that instead of within 2 years of issuance of a Petoskey zoning permit, that it read, whereas the city council requires the rehabilitation of the facility shall be completed within 2 years of the date of this resolution. And I say that because that within 2 years of issuance of a Petoskey zoning permit is kind of a floating date. So someone could wait a while, and casting no aspersions on those present, just for clarity, that if it's within 2 years of the date of this resolution, it just seems very clear to me. And then, of course, as Shane indicated, you can have an extension of that 2-year period as well, if need be. So that'd be one thing. And then my question for Laura is, does that extension of the 2-year period, if it's requested, does that return to city council for decision-making.
There we go. Now I'm unmuted. Yes, let me first say, if I can, that I agree that the assessor is typically the one who determines obsolescence. The statute references the Brownfield Act and it doesn't say who makes that determination, but the assessor is common. With respect to the revocation, if I understand your question, Councilmember Demore, do you mean, does the council decide whether to revoke it?
No, I'm sorry. I'll try again.
Okay.
Maybe I misspoke. Does any extension of the 2-year period come back to city council for decision-making?
Yeah, the council would have to be the one to grant the extension of time, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then is there any reason on page 36 at the top that the date for what I'm calling a sunset clause could be linked to the date of this resolution instead of the date that the zoning permit's issued?
You can link it to the date of this resolution. The statute, the Oprah statute, simply refers to a time authorized by the legislative body in the exemption certificate or a duly authorized extension of that time. So there's no problem with making it from tonight's date.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one question. Of our 3 Oprah ones that we have accomplished so far, what were the length of years that we granted them? Were they all 12 or what were they, do you recall?
I don't think we did have done that in the past, which is something we're trying to correct going forward.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Mr. Moore.
So one follow-up question for Laura. Laura, do you have to have that sunset clause in there to be able to time limit or revoke ultimately, or no?
Well, the other, certainly I would recommend that. The statute also contemplates that you could have revocation if the holder of the obsolete property exemption certificate has not proceeded in good faith with the operation of the rehabilitated facility in a manner consistent with the purposes of this act and in the absence of circumstances that are beyond the control of the holder of the exemption certificate. That deals with not the timing of completion, but whether that anticipated project is in fact being operated. So there would still be that lever or mechanism for a revocation. But if you do not set a time within which it needs to be complete, then you certainly don't have grounds to revoke it if it takes too long to build.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Shields.
Thanks, Mayor. I think that 2 years from date of of today is pretty ambitious, and I appreciate the ambition of the developer. And I also appreciate what we're doing here in council, recognizing the delays we're having from our other Oprahs. But I don't know, I feel like 2 years to do a significant development project is potentially unrealistic. I had in my notes was suggesting instead of completed, significant progress as at the council's discretion. I understand that opens up to what does that significant progress mean? Potentially the extension is that you've mentioned is something that would appease or work for this situation, lower my concerns about the 2 years and that burden. I wonder then if because this has to be, because we're putting a date in the resolution, if we also put in the resolution that council will consider an extension.
I think the city attorney just said that that was an option for city council. It would need to come back to city council. I'm okay with the 2 years. And if they've made significant progress, I know city council is not going to say no to any requests. So I believe that 2 years from the time that we adopt this as city council is significant time to work with. Mr. Moore.
I would just indicate too that the Oprah statute does say that exists a duly authorized extension of that time. So
Mr. Knopfler.
You know, I think the zone, I'm with Derek on this. I was impressed, since this is an Oprah district for just this address, I was impressed with the developer last time and the consultant. He's got some pretty strong commercial interest to get this thing going.
Sure.
And you really can't do anything until you get the permit. So I don't know what kind of time frame it's going to take from today, because I imagine this is a series of steps for this guy in the project. And typically, I would agree that it should just stay 2 years from the date of the zoning permit, because I don't have a sense that this guy is trying anything to screw anything up and delay things.
Mr. Johnson, could you step to the mic?
Certainly.
Full name, full address.
Tom Johnson, 1414 Timber Ridge Trail, Wayne City.
Have you experienced, what do you feel is the length of time from the time we okay this to the time that Emmett County would approve to proceed?
You know, there's always unforeseens that you can't expect, but yeah, you gotta work hard. You have to be really driven to keep it on schedule. That being said, when you said 2 years, I thought, oh, all right, maybe we'll beat this and exceed expectations. It'll take probably 4 months to go through the whole historic tax credit process with MEDC, because we have to, we're expecting a letter of interest from them, or we have one, I'm sorry, we just recently got it. And so now we have to work out with legal counsel of the investor bank, which is Mercantile Bank, and his legal counsel. So that's probably 3-4 month process. And once that's done, then we can start. And so I think Randy was talking about our last meeting when we were here about an 18-month period as being reasonable. So I thought, there's a little bit of leeway there. 2 years is nice. I think either way will make it work. I think there's going to be good communication that I'd like to see these through fruition. That gives me a lot of peace of mind, knowing that that's there, and it seems to be strong willingness from you guys. It's really more important what Randy thinks. But from my experience, you guys seem to really engage and supportive of this. So that's what matters. So if something does come up, I feel like we can communicate that. But in the end, that's our big hurdle right now, is just to get through some legal documentation. The syndication process is complex, and I have to layer that with the final MEDC grant approval details. That's really our only lead time right now. Other than that, you know, we're ready to go. He's been wanting to start on selective demo since last spring, but couldn't because we had to get through all these processes. But
Okay.
in any case, other than that, we're ready to
I
go.
feel good about it.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
thank you,
that-
Mr. Johnson. I feel 2 years, and if they come back, we will gladly work with them. So I stick with Ms. Demore's 2 years. I think it's a good way to be consistent and start looking at putting 2-year sunset clauses on pretty much everything to speak. Ms. Demore.
I just want to make clear that I fully support this project, and this is not intended at all to suggest you would not follow through. What I'm looking for, sorry, a lawyer, is just clarity. And as drafted, it's kind of a floating date because, you know, we don't know when you might get that zoning permit. So that's the purpose of it, simply setting a date certain so everybody's clear. Thank you.
All the discussions, very appreciated, by the way. This has really been very constructive the last time we're here today. It's really appreciated.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this? Mr. Shields?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, Mr. Moore, I respectfully disagree on the need to pin that down to an exact date. I would support the Petoskey zoning permit because of the reality of potential delay in timing and desire to support our local small developers. That said, let's pass this. So I'm not going to I'm not gonna make a motion. If you want to make the motion with that language, go for it.
You will make a motion.
Well, do we want to see what Ms. Walker's thinking so we don't make? a motion?
No, not at, I'm fine with us moving forward as discussed.
I think we got two things on the table that we're discussing on the date. Is the start date 2 years from today it's got to be done, or he comes in here for an exception? or 2 years when he gets his zoning permit issued after he does all his stuff. That's, I think, the issue.
So, right, so she's recommending, what I understand is Councilwoman Demore recommended that we do it from the date of approval from city council. And the zoning permit actually comes from the city as well. A building permit comes from the county. So I did need a little bit of clarification on that,
Yes.
but moving forward, I believe that putting the language forward for approval from city council, I would be fine with that as well.
I just didn't want to move forward with this motion if we should be having another motion. So, okay, so we have two motions here, right?
Well,
No.
no one's made a motion.
Just yours.
Or just two.
Just the ones on the application.
Not the one on page 29 and 30 also?
Right, you need
One
to
is to
establish the
establish the
district.
district and another one is to approve the application certificate.
You want me to move them both forward,
No, I'm one at a time.
one at a time? Does somebody else want to make the first one since the second one was where I'll make the change?
Mr. Shields,
I move to
establish.
establish an Oprah district for 434 East Mitchell Street.
I second the motion, Mayor.
Any discussion? Public wish to weigh in on this? There being none, we go to Sarah Beck for roll.
Shields.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Knocktron.
Aye.
Murphy.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to old business B, which involves the support of Oprah exemption certificate application. Before 34,
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
I make the motion to move forward the resolution to approve the obsolete property rehabilitation exemption certificate application set forth on page 35 and 36 with the one correction at the top, or excuse me, amendment at the top of page 36, that the facility shall be completed within 2 years of the date of this resolution.
Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion, Mayor.
Motion from Mr. Moore, second from Ms. Walker. Other discussion, council, on this motion? Does the public wish to weigh in? It says this council. Nobody online. I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Moore.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Knocktron.
Aye.
Shields.
Aye.
Murphy.
Motion passes 5-0.
Have we opened it up for public comment?
I did. I said if the public wishes to speak,
I would like to make a comment if I may.
yes,
Yes,
yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Yeah.
My name is Dale Hall. I have lived in Petoskey for the last 25 years. But I've worked professionally.
I need your full address.
I'm sorry. Dale Hall, 1180 Winnell Court, Petoskey, Michigan, 49770. As I said, I've lived here for 25 years. I moved up from Grand Rapids, but I've spent 62 years serving governments all over West Michigan and Northern Michigan. And I am responsible for having started 7 nonprofits in Petoskey, for whom we have raised over $25 million in the last 20 years. This is a fabulous place to live. I'm happy to say that I know many of you, both professionally and personally. And you probably know enough about me to understand when I say, as Shakespeare wrote in Othello about Iago, I am nothing if not critical. I like to think of myself as I am nothing if not purposefully critical. And that's what I tend to be here. I wish I could say the same about other governments I worked with, but this is the finest governmental institution I have ever worked with. I'm talking about the Petoskey City Council. I share that adoration for your work with my neighbors a lot. I write about it a lot. And I want to share some of my observations of late that have caused me to be here tonight. They may seem very simple on the surface, but for those of us who live here every day, they're extraordinarily important. Come down here to the park, sit on the beach to read, cool off. This park is always in beautiful shape. There is never any litter to speak of in this public property. I could say the same about all the public property in this city. And here's an example. We just held a sidewalk sale. Thousands of people walking the streets, buying things, throwing paper on the ground in the streets. The big pieces of paper people pick up, responsible people pick up. But as I was walking around the sidewalk sale, I found 4 young people working together with tools that would allow them to pick up the tiniest pieces of paper, including, of all things, cigarette butts. My wife and I used to pick up the trash on a mile and a half on the highway near our home. We would get 6 garbage bags full 4 times a year. Most of it, cigarette butts at every corner. People stop their cars, open the door, dump out their ashtrays, damn them. But this government picks them up one way or another. I think that is incredibly important. And I just wanted to take this opportunity on behalf of all of my neighbors to thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. I know at one time you were the director of the Crooked Tree Arts, and thank you for your dedication to our community as well, Mr. Hall. Okay. Where are we at?
Already did roll.
We haven't agreed with that, are we not?
Yep.
Okay. First reading of the proposed ordinance amending chapter 7, building and building regulations to regulate vacant buildings. I turn it over to City Manager Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. So this continues a ongoing discussion that we've had for the past few meetings. Obviously, we're looking to address some vacant commercial and residential structures that are causing blight concerns in and around our community. So this ordinance is another tool from a code enforcement standpoint that we can use to hopefully motivate a property owner to either reinvest in their property or sell it or turn it over, if you will, but address the ongoing vacant nature of the property. Just leaving a property vacant to deteriorate is not a workable solution. So this ordinance assists us from staff standpoint to hold the property owner more accountable for the condition of their property. So again, this continues an ongoing discussion. We've taken your feedback from the last meeting on July 21st. The city attorney has amended the ordinance that's in front of you with redlined comments from your feedback. So this is kind of the next step in our process, is continue to address your feedback, refine this, and then hopefully move it on to the next reading. But this opportunity is open for you to continue to provide us feedback.
We're not gonna go through this line by line. I'm gonna ask that if you have some comment on an area, I will name an area and address it at that point. We're not going to read the whole thing. We've done that once. Is there anybody that has any issues on group 7, 6, and 7.
Say that again, where?
7, 6, and 7. scope and registration of vacant buildings. No, nobody? Move on to section 7(8). Anybody have any comment? I have some. I know we got some feedback. City Council, Demore sent to the city attorney several questions. There are two areas that basically stand out. One is 7(8). C, fire and weather damage. I note that our city attorney has come up with wording that could be placed in there. I'll read it if you want. You have it in front of you. Buildings damaged by fire or extreme weather are exempt but for 90 days from the damage date, provided the owner submits a written exemption request within 10 days from the damage date to the code enforcement officer that states the owner's intent to repair the demolition or demolish the building. Are you good with installing that in 7(8) C?
I got 7(8) B.
Is it B?
That's B.
B.
Yeah.
Okay, B, I'm sorry. C is the next one, the timeline. Are you good with that?
Mhm.
Okay. Next one is the timeline for sale. Her feedback stated buildings listed for sale with a licensed Michigan realtor are exempt for 12 months from the start of the vacancy, provided the owner submits a proof within 30 days of the listing date that the building is listed for sale. That changes it and tightens it up from just could put a for sale sign out on the building and call that good. Are you good with installing that under 7(8) D? Just or not?
Just a quick question. So what we're saying is they're gonna be required to pay a broker fee to list, they're gonna be required to, put it for sale and be required to pay a broker fee as opposed to being for sale by owner. That's the intent here is to force, I get the intent of getting it done. I like it all. I got a little shook up, Mayor, when I was thinking, well,
Right.
they don't have a lot of times, they don't have a lot of money. Now they're gonna be forced to pay a broker fee. And I've seen a lot of places just say it by owner, but
Okay, city attorney,
Yes.
the mayor, question. You heard what Mr.
I did.
Knobtrop stated. How do we get around that?
Right, so, well, I would say this, not that they're required to have a broker in general, because I don't think we could impose that, but rather, obviously, that they may not be exempt from the registration requirements of this ordinance, right? So they may have to register it as a vacant building. This 7(8) is the exemptions from registration. So if you're not exempt, so if you do list for sale by owner, then you would have to submit the registration form pursuant to 7-7.
Okay,
perfect, thank you.
next.
Oh, if I may, Mr. Mayor,
Please.
is the consensus then for 7(8) C to add that within 30 days of the listing date language?
Yes,
All right, thank you.
I
next
have a
one.
question. Maybe about
Yes,
that.
Ms.
Thank-
Walker.
Thank you. So I didn't realize that you have to pay a fee to a broker if you list a property. Is that just for commercial? I thought that you pay your broker fee of like 6%
You saw.
when you sell. So there's no like fee up front that you would have to pay a realtor. Okay, so can I ask a question specifically
Please.
about that? Thank you. So if we're talking about very specific commercial properties on Mitchell Street, those buildings technically are for sale. And it's probably been longer than that 12-month period as we're trying to outline here to avoid some of that. So I'm already seeing loopholes that said properties that are like mostly under concern, commercial properties on Mitchell Street in the 400 block I see opportunities for that developer to find loopholes to avoid registration with this current language. So I'm wondering in the spirit and in the legal terminology, which is not my forte, but the spirit of the document itself would be more my forte. I'm wondering how we address that with legal language to avoid said developer finding loopholes to avoid registration.
I don't know if we can force a person to make a contract with somebody else. And that's what we're basically doing, is forcing a contract by a owner with a realtor, correct?
Or with the, I'm sorry, with also the realtor, the clause here for C, and then also active construction. One of these buildings in particular that I'm talking about has been described as condemned. And the last report that we got back from Tom Doss at Emmett County Building and Zoning was there had been no permits pulled. So it's kind of on this kind of stagnancy. And so both of those would give this builder potentially, or I'm sorry, this developer potentially a loophole for not having to register, because he could say it is under active construction or it is for sale. So I don't think we've gotten there by creating this language. I'm just trying to feel like.
I don't think it's for sale, though. He's trying to lease space, right?
Some of the properties have a Gaslight Properties sign in the window in the 300 block that Petoskey Land and Cattle owns. And I'm not sure about the 400 block of this particular condemned building in the 400 block of Mitchell Street.
Mr. Moore.
I'm just gonna echo, I mean, generally speaking, I understand what Ms. Walker's trying to get at, and I don't know if we can or not here. But like relative to 7-8C, the sale provision, it could allow hypothetically an ill-intended actor to list a property for sale while not considering any offers to purchase, thereby effectively providing a 12-month window for vacancy under this exemption. So that's just an example. And I don't know, following up to Ms. Walker's example, Laura, if that's anything we can get at here or not.
You're always going to have good actors and quote unquote bad actors, right? So any parameters you put in place to try to prevent somebody effectively gaming the system also have a consequence on people who are not trying to game the system. So if the city wants every property listed for sale for any period of time to register, right, then that's something that you can do and comply with the ordinance. But if you do want to allow properties legitimate, and the reason there's a realtor requirement is to try to get to that legitimate listing of property. Not to prefer realtors over others, but to say if you've gone to the trouble of engaging a realtor and signing a listing agreement, in most cases, you intend to sell the property. Can you combat somebody who is going to go to those lengths to pretend to be selling their property? I don't know, but also again, it's only for 12 months. So if you do have property that's been for sale for longer than that, they would no longer be exempt. And I'd say with adding, both in B and C with this adding within 10 days from the damage date, within 30 days of the listing date, we likely need to massage in some language for those that were already listed for sale at the time the ordinance takes effect, right? Because it would be impossible for them to provide that notice within 30 days of the listing date if it's already been listed for 2 months. So we can try to massage that into like 30 days of the listing date or 30 days after the effective date of this ordinance, you know, whichever is later.
Mr. Moore.
I forgot that with 7-8-A, I had some constituent input, and I also noticed there's comments there that we're supposed to talk about. But the constituent suggestion was that, kind of following up on last time where we took out the need for folks absent 180 days to register. The constituent suggestion was that a code enforcement violation during the temporary absence could trigger extinguishment of the exemption. And I don't know what people think about that. That's kind of interesting. So if it was vacant and it's exempt, but then there's a code violation, code enforcement violation, that would trigger stopping the exemption. And I don't know what folks think about that.
It sort of does that to the extent that 710 imposes those code requirements on all vacant buildings, including those exempt from registration. So again, they're subject to the code. Is the thought that then they would no longer be exempt and then have to register while we're dealing with the code issue, which is probably the, bigger enforcement piece.
Yeah, that I think was the thought.
Okay,
Okay. You good with that, council? Moving on to 710. Came up the discussion on 45 degrees from September to April. Power sump pump and winterization of the building. There was a concern that it be higher, raised up. That's up to city council to set the policy. I know when the power was out and I was in my house, it would go to 42 at night and I would pump it up with the stove and the fireplace to 52. And it was livable, which means that nothing is going to freeze or rot or damage done. And I think 60 is a bit high. I think something more in the range of 50, 52, meaning no pipes would freeze in that situation. So I would suggest maybe raise it from 45 to 50. If you feel better about it. Mr. Knobtrop, you have a concern?
Not really. I think 50 is fine. 45 is, I think the real objective is that it's not going to cause freezing. You know, I turn my house down every night to 55 to make my wife happy. And so 50, you can live at 55. So 50 seems to me to make sense too.
No.
Would you like us to include the make the wife happy standard?
I would like to make the wife happy in everything I do.
I think, how long have you been married?
53 years.
I think you figured that out, so. So look at changing that to 50.
got it.
Swallow my gum. Next is concerns and questions were on penalties, I believe. Was there some question about that, which would be 712? Anything on 712? Anything on 711? Anybody have anything on those? Okay. I think, is there anything left to look at if there are concerns? Mr. Shields?
Just with that 7-8A, Mr. Moore brought up with the comments there. Is there a decision that needs to be made on that?
Mm-hmm.
Which one?
On which item? Sorry.
This is page 46, 7-8A, the temporary absence.
Ah,
I don't know if we've made a decision on those questions.
That's the way they did it.
Said it was up to city council policy, a code enforcement violation during the temporary absence could trigger. Yeah. That's her comments.
So the question, yeah, these comments are those what's up, what council is approving or?
Well, it's up to council to identify what they want to put into this one.
Yeah, there was some question at the last meeting about
Yeah.
folks that had to register that that are seasonal. So I look back on what we did downstate when we did this in Adrian and the language that they used, and I can't remember which one it is here, but Laura put one in here too, but
Yeah.
dwellings wherein the owner spends a portion of the year residing at another address is what language we used. That maybe that simplifies it a little bit more, instead of putting an actual time, like a number of days. But that's something we need to get that input on, how you want that worded.
I don't personally, I've got neighbors that are there 3 times for 4 or 5 days for the whole year. They're not there, but yet they come there, take care, have the yard cut, etc. So I can't see them. They're not gonna be there 180. They're not gonna be there. You can't really put a number on this. I don't believe it, in fairness.
I'm with you, Mayor. And, you know, I like all the languages. I thought you took our comments last time and did a really nice job with this. I know I had a long call with a lady who was very concerned about this.
Me too.
And I agree with your comments, Mark.
You prefer one or the other on in the margins there?
I put down okay for me with all, both of them.
I think the one you read was good. Dwellings wherein the owner spends a portion of the year residing at another address.
Yeah.
That's the second one.
You're good with that, council? Question, Mr. Shields.
I am okay with that. I think it's interesting, the question of the impact of, to the community of residents who only are here a couple handful of times out of the year. You know, I did talk to that lady as well, but that's not what this ordinance is about. So I think that's a different question about the impact of.
Well, it is though, temporary, exempt from registration if it's not occupied. And your home isn't occupied, you're gone 150 days a year.
But you're upkeeping it. So for the state of this, for the state of this ordinance, I'm okay with this suggestion.
That's why I think the ad that we discussed earlier, that a code enforcement violation during the temporary absence would trigger extinguishment of the exemption, is a good thing to have in there. Because that would sort of broadly address,
Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. And so along those same lines, the same conversation I believe that we all had with said constituent in Ward 4 would be any kind of registry where vacant homes are identified would be public information, and that a bad actor could potentially, through FOIA or just public process, access that list and then target a home. So how is this new language kind of avoiding a public registry or a accessible public registry of vacant residential properties in particular?
I think because they're exempt.
They're exempt. They're not even gonna be listed or registered at all.
Except those, okay, so there would be potentially vacant that qualify, that or would not be exempt, then they would fall on some kind of registry, and then that could be like a targeted list. So I'm just trying to figure out if there is any way to protect information of vacant buildings that are registered, that don't qualify for any of these exemptions, to protect that public information. And I don't know if that's possible because of the very public process of policy creation. Yeah, thank you for answering my question, if it's answerable.
Yeah, I mean, you could exclude residential properties from the entire ordinance if you wanted to, but then
No,
you, yeah, right.
Right.
I'm sorry.
I think
Okay, so I guess there's always a risk when you have any kind of like registration, like registration of the Airbnbs or short-term rentals, for example.
Exempt? Yeah, they won't.
So there's no.
I guess there is the ability for somebody that was like, had nefarious intentions or whatever to get a public list, and then there's nothing you can really do to prevent that, because we've crossed all of our Ts and dotted all of our Is here with the intention of getting a registrar so that we could address vacancies and blight. Okay, I think that I kind of answered my own question. I just needed to talk it out with y'all.
No, it's a good point.
Thank you.
Okay. So we've taken the second one and we've installed that in under temporary absentee. Moving along, I think we've covered the entire piece. Does anybody have any other questions, comments? We'll be moving this on to second reading, possible adoption. It'll be cleaned up and presented for the next
The
meeting.
only thing I don't think we got addressed that maybe Laura needs some time was Councilmember Demore's question about if there is a code violation, can that trigger a revocation of someone being exempt?
Yeah, I added to my notes to put that language
Okay.
in, either in 7.8 or 7.10.
Okay, thank you.
And it wouldn't be enough of a change to warrant to go back to a first
No.
reading. We can move forward with a second reading. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next is the second reading, possible adoption of proposed ordinance amending Appendix C, sign ordinance regulating murals. So. I see the city
Mayor?
attorney was asked about that as well.
Mayor, can I ask you a question?
Please.
Just in regards to the second reading that we just did, is there no opportunities for public comment, or did you already ask and nobody asked?
We can do that. Normally, we haven't asked until we had a motion, but
Oh,
legally, I don't have
This is
to, I
the
believe. Is
first
that
reading.
correct,
Sorry, thank you.
city attorney?
Yeah, you don't have to have, but you don't have to have a public hearing, I don't think, under your charter on first reading.
Do I need to ask the public to weigh in on it?
No, but you can.
Yeah, usually we do. Is there anybody that wishes to weigh in on the vacant building? First reading, which will be available for you at the next meeting if you wish and aren't here or wish to wait. Is there anybody who wants to speak to council? There being none, we move to the mural ordinance. City Manager Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. So this, at second reading last meeting, there was a concern about, language being removed from the sign ordinance. So we kind of hit pause before we adopted that, just to make sure that the language that was reflected in the ordinance was accurate, that this would be, removing murals from the existing sign ordinance. So our city attorney did, move through that and made the amendment that's in front of you. Certainly, again, open for questions and feedback.
Council, any questions or comments, feedback? Mr. Moore.
I just had one thing on page 55. Section 3, this is this addition of the new section to the sign ordinance, talking about murals. And the question that I had for Laura earlier was just, since murals are now out of the sign ordinance and they're in their own ordinance, that as a part of that paragraph, it references where you can find the rules about ordinances. So it would just be adding, governed by Article X, Chapter 8. So people, if they're reading the sign ordinance and see the definition of murals and like, well, where do I go to learn about murals? It would have that reference. So
I do think
all.
that's a good idea, and we can make that change for is this second reading already on this one?
This is second reading.
All right, well, then let's nail down that language. That's not such a, that's a very insubstantial change. So that would be.
Let's get the wording on that. So
Yeah.
when the motion is made, it is included.
Shall be reviewed based on. Okay. So I think we just add a comma to the period at the end, and we'd say pursuant to, I think it's chapter, chapter pursuant to Chapter 8, Article X of the Petoskey Code of Ordinances.
Are you good with that, council? Yes. Do I have a motion?
Just a second.
Oh, get
just
it right.
For clarity, we're on 55 under.
So it's section 3, amendments to
Three,
Article
12.
3.
Paragraph 12.
But where
Yeah.
is she adding the comma?
So we'll add the comma at the very end of that subsection 12 murals, where it says, and approved by the city council, comma, pursuant to Chapter 8, Article 10 of the Petoskey Code of Ordinances.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion such as that?
So moved with the addition of pursuant to Chapter 8, Article 10 of the Petoskey Code of Ordinances on page 55, Section 3, at the end of paragraph 12, murals.
Support. I have a motion from Mr. Moore, second from Mr. Shields. Any other discussion? Does the public wish to speak on this? If they do, step forward. Mike. There's nobody online either, I see, so we will go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Demore,
Aye.
Shields.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Knocktrab,
Aye.
Murphy.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, council. Cleaning this up. Thank you, city attorney, for helping. Discuss proposed dangerous building ordinance. That's E under old business, the last of old business. We'll turn it over to City Manager Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. So this continues our, again, our effort to address code enforcement related issues, give us, again, tools in our toolbox. I know it may sound like this is somewhat negative or heavy-handed for some may believe, but what we're trying to do is get compliance, and we're certainly, we work with people from the very start. And all we are seeking is compliance with codes. We're not trying to be heavy-handed, but there's some folks that just have no interest in working collaboratively with us. And so we believe we need tools in our toolbox to address blighted properties. And again, if you're a property owner that's maintaining your property, investing in your property, and you live next to a property that has not done those same things. I mean, we desire to make sure that we all are able to enjoy our neighborhoods, our surroundings. And again, we're seeking compliance. We're not asking for people to, hopefully this is not becoming a situation where it's a financial concern, because we're certainly willing to work with people to reach compliance, and we'll give a significant time and milestones for people to achieve compliance. But this, again, is another tool that would be in our code enforcement toolbox, if you will, to provide us additional guidance to address property owners that have been concerning for many, many years. So this was on for discussion last meeting. We didn't quite get to it. So this is just a discussion item. If you want to try to give any sort of clarity to myself or the city attorney on how we continue to amend or refine this ordinance so it fits our unique characteristics, that's would be valued.
Does anybody have any feedback to give at this time? Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a question. So in the dangerous buildings ordinance, what is the value of language that's really strong? Like we talk about words like blight or blighted, vacant, and condemned. Are those legal terms that have meaning to them that you wouldn't necessarily put those as an ordinance name? We're calling it a dangerous buildings ordinance, and it kind of encompasses all of the above. It could be blighted, it could be vacant and blighted, and it could be technically like issued like a statement of being condemned.
Right. So what's unique about this, unique in a way, is that for this ordinance, we didn't go out and just come up with this. This mirrors state law. So the language we have in here is directly from the housing law of Michigan, and it's where it vests municipalities with the authority to have these dangerous building procedures that really kind of allow an administrative proceeding to take care of things, with the idea of having less go through court, frankly. So we didn't come up with those terms. That's what the Michigan legislature put in place, and we mirror that to make your ordinance as enforceable as possible.
Mr. Shields.
On that discussion, and this is for council or city attorney, is I appreciate bringing it up, Ms. Walker, because the dangerous building does limit a building that doesn't benefit the public welfare. As Manager Horn mentioned, someone is living next to a building that technically isn't dangerous, but it is vacant, and it is not producing the traffic. It is an eyesore because it is vacant. Does that get covered in a dangerous building ordinance? And I didn't think it did. Maybe that's just because of the title, but just because it's vacant, it can still be kept up and maintained vacant. And then that has an impact on our public welfare. And so I understand. So my question is that something council wants to consider, even though there isn't backed up by the court, and there's some risk to that, adding that type of language. But are we at a point where that's the type of action that our residents are asking us to take?
So I can't speak to what your residents necessarily, but I will echo the city manager's comments that it is another tool in your toolbox. It will not be the tool that you need for every property. But sometimes with municipalities, we encounter a situation where you've got a building that's, you know, dilapidated, decayed, you know, animals are getting in and out of it. And sometimes the code doesn't have an easy way to address that. So this gives you another mechanism for dealing with that. You're right, if it's just simply vacant but well maintained, this isn't your statute, right? But if you've got things that fall within that dangerous building definition on page 59 of your packet, that's really what this is intended to deal with.
Thank you.
Mr. Knobtrop.
Mine is somewhat of a financial question, and I think I know the answer, but I just want to make sure I'm clear on it. Is the priority of a lien judgment, is it ahead of mortgages and behind real estate taxes? Or is it, so if we go through the cost of demolition, and everything, where are we in the priority of the lien?
It's behind the mortgage.
So we're behind the mortgage. So that's a risk.
It could be 3
Yep.
years before.
That could be a significant financial risk.
Yeah, there's always a risk. There's never a guarantee of getting your money back. And that's why I'd say this is really reserved for situations. And it's not not the only tool in a toolbox, even if you do have the ordinance. But where there's, you know, some imminent danger that you want to take care of.
Mr. Moore.
So when I look at section 13-29, which is penalties on page 63,
Mhm.
violations constitute a municipal civil infraction. So right now, that means $50. And so in the same way, we looked at the vacancy ordinance and prescribed something better, higher, or whatever. I think we should consider that here as well. That's for
Yeah,
my-
and really the teeth to this is, and I recognize that language in there, but you know, the teeth in this is that the city can go in and do work on the property, and place it as a lien on the property, and that lien can apply even to other property. So the civil infraction it's there, but it's certainly not going to be your main method of recovery.
Am I right? This is also a misdemeanor, failure to comply with an order here,
No,
125.541
thanks. Yeah.
B1.
Yeah, it does have that. I don't love, and we can talk more about this, but the problem with the misdemeanors is it's never the most effective way to get compliance. You can do it, it's more teeth, but it's not what gets properties cleaned up.
And then my second question had to do with section 13-28, paragraph 2 about reimbursements of costs. I didn't realize at first that this whole ordinance pretty much tracks the statute significantly. But in the statute, they define the costs of demolition pretty broadly, and then that wasn't included there. And I didn't know if there was a reason for that or what.
I can take a look at that for our next meeting. I'm trying to pull that up here. We're certainly not intending to narrow the definition of cost, so I can take a look at that.
Thank you.
We're working on this for a first reading at the next meeting, correct?
Mhm.
I think that's the intention.
Yes, I just wanted to make that in public so everybody knows this is not, next meeting will not be the motion, second reading, but it will be the first reading on this. This is simply for discussion, feedback for the city manager and for Laura. Mr. Shields.
Thanks, Mayor. So I just in a summary comment, I think this is needed or valuable. I think it's an important tool. I think it's pretty limited in impact and scope. And council may want to look at some other type of ordinances related to blight and vacancy in addition, but I think this is an important tool.
We also have the International Property Maintenance that is also available for enforcement as well.
Yeah, that's a very important tool that we have.
Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess one of my questions is as well, if a dangerous building has already been through the court system with Emmett County, Building and Zoning being the, I guess, the defendant, or I don't know how you.
Plaintiff, yeah.
Those were same things. And it's like at a standstill. So I guess I'm wondering, what are like the intersections between like the land bank authority, and at what time the land bank can assume a property if they've been behind on taxes, for example, to the taxing authority? Like, I think it's like a 3-year window. I guess
So
I'm
those-
wondering what maybe intersections there also might be that would give legal standing to kind of expedite the process or give better legal footing in a court of law.
So those are kind of different issues. So on the property tax foreclosure side, it doesn't matter whether there's code compliance or not. And to some extent, it doesn't matter who owns it. We can always, go after and try to get compliance, even if it's been foreclosed. So that's kind of a sort of a separate issue. What I think is interesting where your question went, though, that's important to address is the interplay between existing. You might have a property that's been going through different types of code enforcement, and now you have a dangerous building ordinance. And can you go back to that property and initiate a dangerous building proceeding? And the answer is yes. It's a different ordinance. It's a different violation. We can go forward and follow this process if we want to.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore.
And this question's probably more for city manager, but Laura, pipe in, please. But when you look at the hearing officer here, to me, this is like a pretty heavy lift, this position. Somebody with expertise in engineering, architecture, building, et cetera. And then they also are running hearings where you're taking testimony. And so I'm just wondering if you've thought about that at all.
I mean, I think the city attorney provided a couple options. You could go that route. You could do an appeals, a Board of Appeals process that also can review things. It's interesting, the community I came from, I guess it's a state thing, but we had a municipal judge. So we had a municipal judge that was elected, and when we had code cases, every month he presided at City Hall and in council chambers, and we were able to get a lot of things done that way. Unfortunately, we don't have that mechanism here in Michigan. I'm not sure why, but that was a very valuable tool that we didn't have to tie up court time. We had our own municipal judge, and he had just as much power to do things. So unfortunately, we don't have that, but I don't know if this person, you all would know our community much better than I do. If there's people out there that would have this type of expertise that would be that third party that could hear these appeals. But
maybe an attorney that's an engineer or something like that. But I think the Board of Appeals
It's different. Yeah.
Yeah, is different. You can either come to a Board of Appeals or to City Council, which is kind of the next step. Is that right, Laura?
Yes, correct.
Oh. Anyway, just putting it out there that could be challenging.
But I don't think any of it is not able to fulfill it. I would lean on, I see it appointed by me with your approval. And if that happened, I would work closely with Shane as well as our city attorney to come up with what would be, I believe, acceptable for a city council. All right. We good with this? Moving on? Now we're on new business. First reading of proposed ordinance amending parking for eating and drinking establishments. I turn it over to City Manager Moore.
thank you, Mayor. So we do have a council or a planning commission member with us. We also, I think John Michelangeli is tuned in as well. So certainly you can refer questions to him. But this came up in a review, an ongoing review, a site plan review that we had, and our zoning administrator noticed a little nuance in on our parking requirements for eating and drinking establishments. Where essentially the current parking requirements in section 1704 are minimum maximum, whereas the minimum is the maximum with no discretionary waiver based on any sort of specific project circumstances. So the way the current standard reads, it's two parking spaces for every 5 seats from an eating establishment standpoint. From our zoning administrator, from our planner standpoint, we believe that's a little too low. From planning commission as well. They did have a public hearing. They did review this request and recommended adoption of the amendment to city council. So John, do you want to chime in on this one?
Yeah, I can. Thanks very much, Shane, Mayor, and City Council. The Planning Commission looked at this over a 2-month period, and it really came to light when we did the site plan review for Spring and Porter Restaurant. They wanted to expand they wanted to install outdoor dining. And we went through the calculations, and everything based on restaurants is based on occupancy, and there's nothing in the ordinance that says anything about employees. And out of the 31 parking regulations for various uses in the city, 7 of them do require, based on occupancy, also an additional phrase that says plus 1 space per employee of the largest shift. So we noted that as a potential issue. And then subsequent to those discussions last month, we had a pre-development meeting on another restaurant, potential eating establishment. And we went through their parking calculations. And again, the parking is short relative to the number of occupants plus the number of projected staff members they would have. So we do think this is a deficiency that we need to correct. And the Planning Commission reviewed it, held a public hearing, as the city manager said. We didn't have any comments verbally or in attendance at the meeting. So the Planning Commission is requesting the Planning Commission to make the minor change to the eating and drinking establishment parking provision.
I think it's important with looking at more and more of our restaurants up here possibly being drive-through only. That would mean basically they would not need any parking at all. And I think there should be parking for their employees. I think the Planning Commission and John are good in pointing out that there are some holes in this. Ms. Walker first.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, John, for kind of the overview of how this came about. Is the Central Business District exempt from this ordinance?
Yes, it is.
Okay, Central Business District would be exempt. So anything that falls outside of the Central Business District would need to comply with this. And in the context of Spring and Porter asking for outdoor dining, if we were to approve this resolution, does that mean that Spring and Porter would not be allowed to have outdoor dining because their parking lot isn't big enough, even though a lot of people park on Porter Street?
That's
And-
correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question, Councilperson Walker. What would have happened with Spring and Porter would have been, they would have had to have reduced the number of occupants in the restaurant sufficiently enough to balance the employee plus the seating. And they kind of went through that with their site plan because based on the total occupancy, the other nuance in the ordinance that we're trying to clarify that we're going through now in the proposed ordinance is that when a restaurant has outdoor dining, the way that the ordinance is set up, we have to include all occupancy. There's no provision that during the summer, people may opt to sit outside and then the inside doesn't have the same level of occupancy. So we're trying to work through a formula that's going to balance that in the future. And one of the things that we've looked at is providing the Planning Commission with somewhat of a discretion in terms of making that change between restaurants that have interior and exterior dining, that there would be some discount for parking because of the occupancy shift. But you're correct. Under the current ordinance today, if we added more employees to Spring and Porter, we would have somewhat of a challenge to provide parking. They do have shared parking arrangements with the laundromat, which were approved by the Planning Commission. And they are entitled to a few spaces on the street. But as you know, over there, parking is tight. And the Planning Commission is obviously looking at that very acutely in terms of some of the other proposals that we're going to be taking a look at in the future.
What happens if a business gets with the neighbor and says, give me a note stating that you're going to let me use 10 spaces in your parking lot because you don't use them, the laundromat?
We've done that, Your Honor. We
They
did
do that agreement, but then 6 months later, laundromat now says, no.
That's part of the site plan review as a condition, and if that's yanked by the person that gave the agreement, then the proprietor of that business needs to come back before the Planning Commission and rework their parking arrangement.
And what about, is there something in here where if a business is sold, that the next business is held responsible for the same thing?
Depends on the occupancy of the business. Because a restaurant may be sold and maybe it's bought by a medical office or a lawyer or a professional office, and then the parking the number of parking spaces is totally predicated on the use that goes in. So we take a look at it case by case.
Okay. Mr. Shields will go first.
Thanks, Mayor. Before I make a comment, I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, Mr. Angeli. So this currently, a restaurant, when they have to meet their minimum parking requirements, do not have to account their staff?
That's correct.
And this is changing that?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, yeah, I very much opposed to this. I'm personally a little offended that this comes to us before some of the housing the zoning changes that I know the Planning Commission's been looking at, but for 2 years, we've been asking for that, and this comes before us. So that's personally a little offensive. But let me just make a comment to say that parking mandates make a oversupply of parking. Cities across the U.S. are eliminating or reducing parking mandates. The American Planning Association has a study showing that the positive effects of removing parking minimums. There's another study that found that building at a lower home to parking space ratio could result in up to 40 to 70% increase in the number of housing units that would be built by developers today. The goal is to let developers choose the appropriate amount of parking for development. That's the movement that's going on throughout the country. I think it's antiquated to start adding amendments or new regulation that would increase mandates of parking. I understand that, we address our community specifically, and that I'm not at this moment saying we got to eliminate all parking mandates, but the idea of increasing the mandates, I will definitely not support that.
Well, let me give you a counterpoint, Councilman.
Please.
The parking ordinance to date is based on minimum maximum, which is primarily intended not to allow developers to determine what they feel their parking is needed, because what we've experienced over the last several decades is a private local entrepreneur would prefer not to have a lot of parking because it's an added cost to their pro forma and their business. However, the national franchises have no qualms about putting in more parking than what they need. And that's the reason why we have minimum and maximums, is to put that cap on. So the parking ordinance was revised by the city about 5 years ago to establish minimum maximum. And basically that's an absolute parking number. There is no latitude, depending on the type of business or the piece of property, that gives the Planning Commission any variance on adding or subtracting 5% either way, depending on the condition. It's an absolute number And with restaurants, this is problematic, especially along Spring Street and Charlevoix and outside of the downtown area. We have to make sure that these businesses not only meet their occupancy needs, but they do provide a couple of parking spaces for their employees, or that's going to be a problem as well.
Thank you, Mr. Akanji. For the record, I do support maximums. I disagree with the rest.
I support the maximum minimum. The reason being is most of these restaurants we're talking about are adjacent, right next door to residents. And I think if they're a business making a profit, I think it's not fair to the people that are sitting in their homes with massive cars parked in front of their house all the time due to us not making plans for asking an employer provide parking. That's all. I just nothing personal, but I just disagree. Mr. Knobtrop.
I'm assuming this is primarily driven for new buildings and it happened to come up with Spring and Porter to take up parking spaces for their outdoor seating. So is this primarily for new development buildings?
John?
You're muted.
Thank you. I was muted. Councilman, it's primarily for both, but I think it favors more of the new development. As the mayor had noted, we haven't seen it yet, but in some of the other surrounding communities, we're starting to see drive-through only restaurants, particularly things like Big B's, Rally Hamburger, for example. Some of the newer Taco Bell, they're strictly drive-through, and based on our ordinance, we would not, because it's an absolute number, they would not be able to have any parking for their employees. On some of the current restaurants that we have, we seem to be hitting the numbers, but we did notice with Spring and Porter that we just barely met the numbers, but it did not include any parking for 1 or 2 or 3 employees. And as the mayor said, we have to rely on people parking in the residential neighborhoods in order to find parking to utilize these facilities. And the Planning Commission is not interested in favoring parking so much that a business cannot be used. We're trying to balance both the parking needs and the ability to have businesses stay in business and businesses to open in the city on some of the sites that we have.
Okay, so I have a fair amount of experience in this too, and I've been on the other side of the fence on this, and I'm a little worried about the enforcement of it. Is if I'm the restaurant guy trying to build a new building, I want the location, want the spot, and I find that there's now a law that says I got to have enough parking spaces for my maximum shift. I can tell you what, I would say to you, what's my magic number? And I'll tell you what what's the magic number of spaces available. And then I'll tell you how many employees will be parking or be working. You're going to game it. And I don't particularly, I get it. And the other thing I would have a suggestion is I'm involved in a situation in the city of Charlevoix, and that they were allowed to use in the calculation of their footprint for the building and the parking, they were allowed to use the available street parking, and they entered into a shared parking agreement like the laundromat. It had to be permanent, but they were allowed to use and count for their spaces wherever they made deals. I'm not a big fan. I mean, I get the problem, but I'm not a big fan of this.
Now, we're doing it here too, Councilman. I mean, another recent example is the former church that was on the corner of Ingalls and Madison that is now going to be redeveloped as a child care center. And in that project, the Planning Commission approved off-street parking. They allowed the applicant to park 6 or 7 cars on site or on street based on some parking that the city had done previously. And then they also have an agreement with the insurance agency across the street to utilize 4 of their parking spaces. So in that situation, It's a combination of off-street, on-street, and shared parking in order to make that project work.
So why couldn't we, for Spring and Porter, count their parking spaces that they've got in it and not force them to be locked? Because that's a little parking lot. And why force them into having to use the spaces on their lot when they've got street parking and they got arrangements with the laundromat? Why not
Well, the only
let them do
parking,
that?
yeah, the only parking they had on street was on Porter Street because they can't park on Charlevoix or Spring
Right.
Street.
Right?
And that's why they have the shared parking agreement with the laundromat to use some of their spaces.
But why can't we allow that to be calculated in their outdoor furniture or outdoor
We,
furniture?
we,
outdoor?
we did. We calculated all
Oh, I
of that.
thought you said it was just on their own lot.
No, we calculated all of that.
I got it.
Yeah.
That's a permanent, you need a contract with the other parking area for a permanent, not a 5, 10, 2-year, 3-month piece, correct?
There was an agreement that was discussed at the planning commission meeting. The one thing about the laundromat is they actually have excessive parking. They over exceed what the current parking requirements are now. So the shared parking wasn't really a major issue for them.
What happens if the laundromat is sold and they come before you with a new plan to put a bicycle shop, a hair salon, something like that? What happens to that parking agreement then?
But then we go back to Spring and Porter. That was part of their site plan approval as a condition.
And they would have to then,
We'd have to remedy that.
they would have to remove and cut back to match or,
Yeah,
Okay,
just,
all right.
yeah.
all right. Council? Mr. Shields.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thanks to Mr. Echolangeli and the Planning Commission for looking at this. I respectfully disagree that the balance that you're attempting to strike is going to be struck with this ordinance. I think that the idea of increasing the mandate is going to be counterintuitive. Businesses are going to be hurt. We already have had past reports about the difficulty to do business in Petoskey. This only adds to that. And so I think we should all read The High Cost of Parking by Donald Shoup, which is 800 pages, so maybe not. But I really think we should be very careful in increasing any mandates for parking. Thank you.
I believe that the planning commission has spent a lot of meetings and discussions of this. There are, 9 people on the planning commission who have come up with this thought process and came up with this. I tend to have to agree with the work that they've done. It still gives the developer the opportunity to work with the city on counting rental spaces. And there is a concern for the drive-throughs. There's one looking to come right now. I just feel it's not fair to the neighborhoods that are going to be the ones, whether it be the school, residential, that are being confronted with these cars. I think if you have a business, as your business plan should include this part of it. Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I feel very strongly about this as a small business, and it was brought up in the context of Spring and Porter. But if we're trying to protect ourselves from fast food businesses and they'll take advantage of this maximum parking standard, I just feel like this is going to hurt Spring and Porter, and they're trying to do twofold. First of all, fine dining, updating a pretty old and antiquated building and business, and then expand it to having outdoor dining. So not only are they increasing the number of tables, which is going to increase the need for more parking, but that also those tables will translate into having to have more employees. So it's kind of, they're not going to be able to do any of these things if we pass this ordinance. So
Uh,
I feel like that's,
They can, because all they have to do is work with the laundromat that they're already working with now. Is that correct, John?
Yeah, Your Honor, let me just clarify. Spring and Porter's already been approved and they were approved under the old or the ordinance that just said 2 for every 5 seats. So they've already been approved. They went through the planning commission. They're good to go on their project. But it was that review that led to the conversation about what are we doing about the employees that kind of tripped the trigger on this discussion. So, but Spring and Porter's already approved. They can do their outdoor dining. They went through site plan review and have been approved already.
okay, thank you for that.
Mr. Moore,
So broadly speaking, I think it's important that the workforce has a place to park at their place of employment. So I respectfully disagree with my colleague beside me. I think, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but the data you were citing, at least that short part, I haven't read the 800 pages, had to do with housing, and you and I might even disagree there. But I think an adjunct to this, without speaking about any certain place, is you also have to consider the impact on neighborhoods. And, neighborhoods may have a voice in this idea of overflow onto residential streets. So, thank you.
well, Mr. Knobtop.
I guess I hate to say this, but I really disagree. I think the business owner, the property owners have just as much right to street parking as a residence. Residents do not own the public parking. And so I don't see any reason why we give preferential treatment to a residence than a business trying to make some money and employ people having sales tax. I'm not following the logic of that. And right now, I would probably be a no on this as well.
We actually do have an ordinance about people parking in front of a private residence.
But it's a 3-hour, they got to call, you're allowed, what we just went through that.
Yeah.
And the resident in front, they can complain and
Yeah.
call, and then it's enforced, but it's only if they complain, and it's right in front of them. And they have, it's like a 3-hour or
But understand that if you go to work, you're there for 8 to 10 hours, so you're parked in front of that house. Over on Wachtel, my mother, where I was raised on Wachtel, running into Grace, Mancino's and all of that stuff was constantly parked all the way up the street. And she'd have to call to get somebody to move their car so she could get out of the driveway. It is an issue. It is an issue going and pushing too much into residential. If you're going into a business, you should be responsible to work with the city to provide parking for your employees. Again, that's my opinion from living it. Mr. Moore.
Since this is a first reading, I think one thing that would be interesting is to get feedback from neighborhoods as well. They may have some thoughts or perspectives that would be worth considering.
And I think you need to include the entire city. And how do you propose that?
With the exemption of the central business district, because they're exempt
Right,
from this ordinance. But why are they exempt?
But looking at Madison, Monroe, that's why they had the child's care on Madison and Ingalls. Lease property from an accountant's office or tax, whatever, lease property for the parking because they realize there is not the parking available without bleeding into big time the residential. And I think if you were living there, which I don't think any of us are, none of us are living in that situation, but it is an issue.
I understand the issue. I also understand the whole nuance of it. If you have no seats inside, you're being measured against something with a zero, and that makes no sense. I'm just saying, listening to the arguments here, I feel like I want to be a voice to the business people too. I would prefer access parking. Whenever I would rent a place, I want to have all kinds of parking so that there's no possibility of patrons, not coming because the parking lot's too crowded, because they're thinking it's poor service or whatever. I'd like lots of parking, but I feel like there ought to be a different way to do this, because there's gonna be a way to game it.
And what is the way to do this?
I'm not sure, Mayor. I haven't had the time to drill into this like the town, these guys have done. We're just seeing it. I suppose if I wanted to really do a little research, I probably could come up with an idea. But that's what the planning guys are supposed to do, and we're supposed to react to it.
And that's what they did.
Yeah, and
That's what they've done.
I get it.
That's what's in front of us. This is the first reading. What are we? Are we moving this on? I'm in favor of moving this on. I guess I'll take a poll. Mr. Moore,
I'm in favor of moving it on.
Mr. Shields,
I am not.
Knobtop,
Regrettably, I am not under the current wording.
I also am not.
okay, fine. Proposed adoption of proposed resolution that would authorize execution of an Eagle Brownfield grant agreement for 575 West Mitchell Street. City Manager Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been working with Eagle Brownfield on a project at 575 West Mitchell Street. This is near the intersection of US 31 and 131. This property has hosted a restaurant in the 1940s. It's been a gas station service center from 1929 until 21. We have had contaminated soil and 6 underground storage tanks removed from the property following a gas leak in 1989. The property is vacant now. There is more contaminated soil and 2 additional underground storage tanks that are beneath the remaining building. We have a developer who plans to purchase and redevelop the vacant, underutilized former gas station automobile repair shop into a new restaurant. Eagle Brownfield has authorized a $315,000 Brownfield grant to facilitate the safe reuse of the property as detailed in your Appendix A. Kind of breaks down the cost of where that $315,000 comes from. So the grant will obviously provide assistance to remediate a contaminated blighted site, removing over 250 tons of contaminated soil and removal of 2 underground storage tanks, as well as the demolition of the existing structure, again, to pave way for a new commercial economic development, resulting in 12 new full-time jobs and over $1 million in investment. So what I need from City Council is to execute the $315,000 Brownfield redevelopment grant for this property.
I'd like to just point out that this is a prime example of what we're talking about. 12 employees, and there is not enough on that place to have any parking to speak of, let alone 12 employees plus people that are going to rent it or go to eat there. You're now pushing it into the school district and to,
That's a site plan problem. The problem in front of us is a Brownfield grant. The Planning Commission will review the site plan and address those concerns as they come up.
Mr. Moore.
So of course, I broadly support this. It's a grant. That's a good thing, but I do have some questions. So it looks like I would think this is somewhat of a heavy lift for the city as the grantee. Perhaps you disagree? Okay, so then.
There'll be a grant administrator that'll be paid through the grant. So there would be no burden. Well, I shouldn't say no burden. There certainly will be some burden on me, but there'll be a grant facilitator, grant administrator that will facilitate this grant for us.
So we're gonna subcontract
Yes.
for somebody to do that?
Yes.
Have we entered into any subcontracts yet? No, those are all prospective.
Yep.
Okay.
Ms. Walker.
Thanks, Mayor. I too agree. I am all about the grants and I appreciate, Manager Horn, willing to take on, this other opportunity. I do have some questions about, the fact that the person that is applying for this came from the Jimmy John's development that was vacated from the condemned property on Mitchell Street and is now looking for an opportunity to set up a restaurant across the street from a Subway, which would be their direct competitor, in a location that's really hard to exit and enter from. If you have any experience going into Bay Street Urgent Care,
I
And-
think the city manager just stated that this is about the brownfield. This is not about what is going to be used or utilized on that property.
okay,
This is merely a cleanup.
okay,
And
So-
it's not the same franchisee.
okay.
It's a,
For the Jimmy John's is not the same franchisee. It's like a different entity that wants to open up a Jimmy John's like in
like
Petoskey.
you corrected me, this
Got
is not, this is about cleanup. of-
Okay, so then if we
Soil.
go back to an Eagle Brownfield grant, my question is, there is no approval of like a payment in lieu of taxes that would be otherwise like brownfield developments that the city would have to approve. So this is just like a first phase for cleanup. So 50,000 pounds of soil on an average 40-yard roll-off is about 10 40-yard roll-offs. And I can tell you that the cost for the due care and the demolition of asbestos abatement and removal of the contaminated soils, there's one hauler that does that. They have a monopoly on moving soils to landfill, and that would have to go to Onaway. And so that very nature, like the fact that Eagle is not even looking into photo remediation or any kind of onset remediation, it's always like landfill, 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 is a little bit problematic when we're talking about sustainable materials management plans for the next 30 years for our county. Brownfield soils and landfills make up almost as much as residential trash going to landfill in Michigan. And not to say that there isn't better ways of managing contaminated soils, but we've all attended those Eagle Brownfield redevelopment webinars and we're looking for potential also solutions. So I was kind of wearing that hat at the same time. I'm like, oh, once again, GFL gets paid tens of thousands, almost hundreds of thousands of dollars to move contaminated soils to landfill. And they run a monopoly. And so and wearing all of those hats, I feel like, oh, where is there the opportunity to talk about different kinds of managing contaminated soils, either on site or locally, that doesn't have to go to a landfill that's outside of our county, and Presque Isle County that's impoverished and receives the brunt of all of our garbage. So I was a little bit concerned about that.
Mr. Shields.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Ms. Walker, for raising that. That's, yeah, I would love to have that discussion somehow. Just clarifying, I think Mr. Moore was saying this, Manager Horn, no city monies are going towards this. This is all Eagle.
Right.
Public.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Mr.
you,
Moore.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
let me clarify that. You will see in the check register, disbursements that are going out, but this is an in and out where we'll seek reimbursement from Eagle. So you will see that in the check register, and certainly you can ask those questions as they come, but
Thank you.
Following up on Ms. Walker's area of expertise, about which I know just about nothing. Who makes that decision? Is that Eagle then that?
these would have to be bid out. They would have to follow bid requirements, and they may be the sole source. I don't know that information. That would be an Eagle question, I guess, if that's truly the only game in town that qualifies as that type of hauler. But they would have to follow bid requirements. Yeah.
Do I have a possible motion? Ms. Walker.
Even though I hope that there's a better way somewhere down the pike, I feel fine about authorizing the city manager to execute the Eagle Brownfield grant agreement for 575 West Mitchell Street.
Do I have a second?
I'll support
I have
that.
a motion from Ms. Walker, a second from Mr. Knoptrop. Any other discussion by council? Does the public wish to speak on this? There being none, I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Walker,
Aye.
Crab,
Aye.
Shields,
Aye.
Demore,
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Sorry, Murphy.
It's good. Uh, so that'll move on to successful brownfield grant. Now what we're gonna have is the city council comments, and I'll go to Miss Ward 1, Miss Demore.
So I attended an event in Bay Harbor at the invitation of Councilperson Nachtrab, as did my colleague, Mr. Shields. That event was in support of Nehemiah House and the unhoused population in our community. While there, I learned that a very high percentage of their guests at Nehemiah House are in need of housing at the 0 to 80% AMI level to move forward. That's probably no surprise to anybody at this table. I discussed with some attendees the concept of adaptive reuse of properties, which is an idea like the use of an existing building to retrofit it to house folks. And I hope to continue that conversation more broadly at our work session and in the community at large. Secondly, at our last meeting, we tabled the agenda item regarding bikes downtown, along with other related ordinance items. And I think there are a number of issues still left unresolved that should be addressed. And perhaps a small work group or something could be assembled for brainstorming and problem solving, since those issues that were intended to be addressed there persist. And then finally, I just wanted to give kudos to the Petoskey Youth Advisory Council members who are on the cover of the Michigan Municipal League Review's summer edition. Congrats to these young people, and we'll soon be welcoming at the September meeting 16 coming up from 12. They'll all be here, fingers crossed, so that you have an opportunity to meet. Thank you.
Mr. Shields, Ward 2.
Mayor, I have 3 items as well. So the first one, or first 2 are items that well, all 3 are items I hope this council body will consider for when we talk about budget and projects for the coming years. One is, I've mentioned it a couple times in the past, but the deer call and potentially revisiting the opportunity to spend some funds in doing a deer call in the community. The second one is getting a forest plan for the 800 acres of natural land that we own as a community. I feel like we are not being proper stewards of that land, and not only is it ecologically, but also economically of owners of 800 acres of forest land. So I would advocate for us to develop a forest management plan for how we are managing that property. And then lastly, I am talking with the Groundworks Center about community solar and the Michigan Solar for Savings Michigan grant, and looking at ways that we could bring back the landfill solar project. So I am doing my homework on that, and I hope to bring some possible ideas for us to consider in the future on that. Thank you.
Ward 3, Mr. Knobtrop.
The only thing I want to say is I'm looking forward to the work session on the unhoused, and I understand the housing issue, but I also think that it's a significant public safety issue. The most recent example is the Walmart situation in Traverse City. Person was from Petoskey. I think the different situations in the unhoused group is as much of a public safety, I'm going to say, potential crisis as anything else. And I hope we continue to take the lead in addressing it, or at least attempting to address it.
Ward 4, Ms. Walker.
Thank you. I would also want to piggyback on Joe's comment in regards to our unhoused population and the intersection of the complexities of both being unhoused and mental health and well-being, and this particular individual having had intersection with public safety here and the Emmett County Sheriffs, and how public safety had really tried so desperately to have that, to be able to talk to this person and get them under some kind of safety agreement or housed in the county jail in order, I mean, and what transpired was that person was unable to be identified and as a result, like somehow got to Traverse City and maybe walked to Traverse City or got to Traverse City and then the unintended consequence, I can't imagine how much that probably weighs on the conscience of our law enforcement, like they wanted to do something and they had all intentions of doing that. And there was court orders for the sheriff to find this, identify this person because he was vulnerable, and the outcries of that family over many, many decades of how this young man and his story of what happened to him in high school that has come out on social media from some pretty credible sources. So it's just like that complicated social situation, and we're faced with opportunities to discuss the unhoused population and the complexity of those intersections between lack of mental health services and the privatization or the elimination of public services for mental health patients that we've seen as an evolution in our own community. So weighs heavy on our heart, but also just shows how important the work that we're doing with these nonprofit organizations, with the homeless shelters, with the organizations that are working, North Country Community Mental Health, which serves the Medicaid population and the most vulnerable of our population. So the importance of that work moving forward and the opportunity that we have as policymakers to really create ordinances and policies that honor these very broken systems, but with hope that maybe we can be a small part of the resolution there. Thanks.
Two things. I believe we need yellow pedestrian signs, crossings in the area. The signs that we utilize, while they're very nice, we need yellow ones. I've seen too many close calls this last week, twice at the public library. It really bothered me. I think a yellow pedestrian signs that's around the state would work. Just to throw that out as an opinion only. Lockwood Park picnic is this coming Monday. All the pretty much everybody in Ward 2 have been given a flyer on it. I think last year we had 184 people attend. We'll be doing that again, like I say, on Monday. Thank you to Public Safety for helping work with us on the water slide on the side of the hill. We are now going into closed session. I'm asking for a motion. There will be no further business after this. We will come back and we will simply have an adjournment. So there will be no further business by council after this. But it's a closed session, adoption of a proposed resolution that would authorize to adjourn to a closed session to consider materials exempt from discussion or disclosure by statute pursuant to MCL 152268. 1H specifically identified as client, attorney-client privilege, written legal opinion. Do I have a motion? Ms. Walker?
I'll be happy to make a motion,
I
Mayor.
have a second.
Second the motion.
Shields. I have a motion, Ms. Walker, a second from Mr. Shields. Any other discussion? I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Walker,
Aye.
Shields,
Aye.
Demore,
Aye.
McTrub,
Aye.
Murphy.
Aye. Have a good evening, everybody else out there.
Thank you, Dale.
Thank you. Your kind comments.
I'm gonna switch to the other Zoom room, so I'll see you there.
Thank you.
Sounds
We'll be coming back here for 1 minute.
Okay.
So you can leave your stuff here. Sure. Go for it.
Sarah Beck, do you know that last city
drives to Haba.
Order five cheapest or quicker to get a jet ski.
I'd like to see that. You let me know when that happens. I want to be down on the dock.
We're live.
No further business to come before this council. I call this meeting adjourned